Hey guys, how's it going?
Going pretty good.
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. This week is cruising along. I think a lot of ups and downs and returning to the normal-ish of distance learning and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we refer to it over here in this part of town as the new norm.
Yeah,
Said phrases and words that we never thought we'd have come out before with, fire days and smoke days and air quality days and power outage days and just creating a new norm.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I know that I think kind of along those lines of like that new normal is this like overwhelming sense of building resiliency within kids and families and parents and that we have all of these kind of gnarly events that are coming up and we're wanting kids to, and we're seeing kids become more resilient through all this stuff. And it's always just interesting to me that you have to have these negative events in order to be resilient.
Well, it's like flexing a muscle, right?
Yeah.
If you never have to use your muscles, then they're never going to get stronger.
Yep.
It reminds me of a quote that I read to some of the classes this week is, we don't have a rainbow without the clouds of rain. And sometimes we need that to kind of clear our path, and I know that they're really challenging times and they're hard to overcome, but, I know I've in other videos used the same expression, but it rings true for this week as well, is that these are really abnormal, they're normal feelings for really abnormal challenges that we're facing. And I know that I personally have spent a lot of time talking with Cloud this week. For parents who don't know who this character is, this is Cloud, and Cloud is so good because his feelings and moods are super unpredictable, and it kind of reminds us of what we all go through when we have these really challenging times, is how we're feeling can be really, really unpredictable. One minute we can feel super happy, the feeling word is happy, something happens, and bam, those overwhelming feelings that can include mad and sad come. And we won't stay stuck in these feelings forever. But sometimes we don't even realize what resiliency is until we're feeling happy again. And then what we can recognize is that it's the bouncing back. It's the moving through those other big, harder to have feelings to get to those feelings that we love so much, of feeling happy and loved and cared for and safe and excited. That's what resiliency is.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think of things in terms of, like muscles and things like that. And I agree. I think that, if you're working out, you have stress, which is the working out, and then you have the recovery and then the rebuild phase. And so you stress, rest, rebuild, and you're stronger. And I think that our minds are not that different. We have the stress. Then we have a point where we have to kind of rest and process what's going on. Mm-hmm. And then we have a point where we have to rebuild and kind of take action and move forward. And I think it's important too for a lot of families to know that, like, we get that everyone is at different points in the process, that some people have kind of moved quickly and are ready to like rebuild, move on, get back to the day-to-day. And there are some people that are still in that initial like kind of shock of like what's going on and still at basic needs. And so I think it's important for those families that are like in that basic needs point. We're not saying jump out of this and start, getting your stuff together and move forward, but we're saying it's a process to go through.
It reminds me of actually the stages of grief.
Right.
They're not linear, they're secular.
That's exactly what I was going to say, right? You might move forward and then you might find yourself back there again and you're wondering what's going on. I thought I had moved past this, but it's just a cycle, right? It's you get there and you might move back a couple steps, but then you'll move forward again and you might move back a couple steps. Eventually you do get past it. And moving forward, part of growing up is developing those resiliency skills and knowing that you can move past it. And part of that, I think, too, is perspective. Obviously, a lot of things that have happened in the last 6 months are really big, major events. And that could be part of why you know, what's happening right now feels so big as well, because we haven't had a chance to really, we're not through with one and there's something else thrown at us and something else. So we aren't able to put something else aside. They're just kind of adding on each other. And so because it's so big, people might be struggling a little bit more with it right now and may need more of that in between time that you were talking about, Taylor. Give yourself more time to really look at it and think about it and talk about it and feel the feelings. And the hard part about that might be recognizing what it is you're feeling.
Right. I think something worth noting too is just being respectful that every person feels differently. So while one might be in, I can't believe this is happening, the other one might be ready, like, hey, I've just dealt with this and I'm just going to move forward in that way. So it's finding what you're feeling, putting a name to it, recognizing that what you're doing is resiliency, and you're modeling for your kids what resiliency can look like and feel like, and opening that conversation. So I'm going to pose the question to the two of you. You know, if you have kids that you want to talk to about this, how would you go about communicating to get more out of them or to each other?
Well, I would say if I was a parent and had kids and was in a situation like distance learning and smoke and gnarliness going on, I would start with, I would say this would be the ideal. I don't know if this is what I would do, but this is what I would want to do. I would shoot for, but I would start with checking in with my person, you know, hey, where are you at? This is where I'm at. Let's see where we are. And I know we have talked about sentence starters, and I would maybe, get a sense of like making sure that we're both on the same page, and at a place where we can kind of communicate with our kiddos and be okay. And then from there, I would, bring the kids into the conversation. So that way the kids are seeing this sort of united parent front. But I would bring the kids in a way that is very kind of on the same level. Hey, we're all going through this together. Not like I'm your parent telling you what to do, but more like, this is what makes me happy. What makes you happy? This is what makes me sad. What makes you sad?
I really like that idea. I love sentence starters. I know that it always, for me, it starts with self-care. So before I reach out to a student or a child of my own, I always want to kind of touch base with how I'm feeling about things. What am I feeling? What can I do to help my own self-care so I can have that space available to have that open communication with someone else? How about you, Lee?
Well, I was just thinking, what happens if something's going on in the moment and you don't have the time to do all that?
Yeah.
Thinking about it ahead of time. What if you're the one that kind of loses themselves in that moment and your child's there? What can you do in that moment? I mean, as parents, we've all had those moments, right, where something just overwhelms us. And I think just in that moment, it's a good time to be able to model for them and to be able to say, I'm feeling X, Y, and Z right now because, and it helps you, but it also helps them to see that it's okay to talk about these things and to acknowledge you're feeling these things in the moment. And also maybe show them how you can kind of move past it. So mom's feeling a little, upset. She doesn't have her words right now. She needs to take a break for, 5 minutes. I'm going to go get a drink of water. And when I come back, can we talk about some of this, whatever it might be. But sometimes you catch yourself in the moment, and that's actually the perfect time to be able to do it too, because you're modeling right there in front of them how to be resilient and move past that point.
Yeah, that sounds like just such a genuine moment that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity to shine, because you know what? Kids need to know that the adults, and I mean, all of us, we struggle. We have those harder to have feelings. We have those deep feelings. And sometimes we can't put words to that. But again, it's modeling those really normal feelings for very abnormal and unusual times. And it's the bouncing back. You're not going to stay stuck in sadness forever or stay stuck feeling mad forever. It's the coming back that's actually showing what resiliency is. So I actually love that. I'm not going to say have that happen, but if it does happen, that's an opportunity. That's a moment to show your child or children how to get on the other side of that.
Yeah. And I think it's important to acknowledge too that, in those moments when things suck and it's really tough, it doesn't seem like it's ever going to get better. Like the light at the end of the tunnel seems so far away. but you have to remember that it's there. And, and I think for those moments when we do get real emotional about something or something comes up, um, I think a lot of people, and myself for sure, we want to control that. We want to say, okay, I'm going to figure this out right now. I think we've all had times where we're working on something and it's not going right. And so we just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And eventually we're like, it's not working. And so I think it's okay to remind yourself that, like, this, I would say 9 times out of 10, this problem doesn't need to be solved right now. It's okay to take a minute, 5 minutes, an hour, just take a step back for a second. And even just taking that like 30-minute, 30-second step back makes a world of difference.
It's funny. It's almost like doing like a jigsaw puzzle, right? And you're looking
Yeah.
for that one piece. You're looking for that one piece, and you just can't find it. And you finally say, "Okay, I've got to step back for a little bit."
Yeah.
And you do something else, and then you come back and you go, "Oh, well, there it is," right? But you have to look at it from a different angle, or maybe just get a fresh view of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe taking that time so that you can figure out what you need to do, and then be able to come back to it. That's important.
Yeah, I know that when all of this was going on, I mean, I'm in Rohnert Park, so my experience was completely different. But I also had some stuff personally happening in my family, and it just felt like all the layers, how you guys were talking about layers on top of each other. And finally, I kind of just gave into it, and I just allowed myself to be in what I was experiencing. And let me tell you, I mean, I had some big long cries, and it's just where I needed to be in that moment, and just realized that I wasn't going to be there forever, but I guess being respectful of how I was feeling in that moment, and just like opening up to that's where I had to be.
Yeah.
So I've got a question for you, Taylor. You're a guy, right? So we're talking about all this emotional stuff, and everything, and we're and we're all trying to teach our boys it's okay to have your feelings and everything. It might be harder for boys. It might be harder for the men in their lives to be able to model some of these things. So what are some tips that you can give to like those men out there?
Yeah, well, yeah. And I'm honest with people that I'm a counselor, but outside of work, like, I'm not a counselor, and it's hard to talk feelings and emotions. And I'm not just saying that as like a, just because this is getting put out to parents. Like, it is legit. It is tough to talk about those kind of things. And I have definitely struggled with that in the past. I'm very much the kind of like, I'm fine. And a lot of people know the acronym FINE. I probably shouldn't say here. But, I think for me, being able to do something physical is really important. And, even like this last week, I've been stressed with, work, and I've got some other stuff, like Chris, I've got some family stuff going on. And it was so funny because I went to go ride my bike, and riding and trying to kind of like work out the stress and realize that, like, well, dude, you still have to pay attention to the road as you're riding your bike. You can't just like get lost in your train of thought. But I think that doing something physical, kind of with where you can kind of let your brain coast, is really important. So whatever that is, if it's a walk, if it's a run, a bike ride, if it's hitting a punching bag, rolling on the jiu-jitsu mat, doing stuff like that, whatever it is, chopping wood, that kind of like doing something physical where your mind can just kind of go, it does help at least figure out what's going on. And I think there's a balance of, I've learned that I have to be a little bit more, I have to like give people the opportunity to pull it out of me, if that makes sense, because I know even for myself, I'm still working on being able to just open up right away. But I think for a long time, I would close off the opportunity for someone else to kind of pull it out. And I think it's important, as a dude, that if I know that I have someone that wants to talk to me about something, give them the chance to pull it out of me.
So perhaps sentence starters would work really well with you, Taylor.
They do work really well with me. But also, I mean, just for me personally, and I think for a lot of people too, getting away from environments like home, work, doing stuff like that, going for a drive tends to really help. Reducing. There's nothing worse than like starting to get into a conversation with someone and then they check their phone, or just starting to talk to someone and then someone else comes in the room and you're like, all right, I'm done. This, it was there for a second, now it's not anymore.
Moments passed.
Yeah. Yeah. But, sentence starters work great. And I think when there's that sort of like connection with someone where I know that like they genuinely care about me and I know that I'm going to have the time to open up, then it works. But if I feel like the other person is rushed or I've got to like, they're trying to like fit it into their schedule, then it's like, yeah, maybe not.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering because, like Krista was saying, she allowed herself that moment to, or those many moments where she just said, okay, I just have to have a good cry.
Yeah.
Right. And was able to acknowledge these are just all these feelings I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And I know that, we kind of have this stereotypical thing. Well, if you hold up the kimochis, right, you have all these feelings, but anger always comes in front, right? For men, anger is that one acceptable big emotion you can have. So a lot of times, you might be feeling other things behind us. That might be where those sentence starters help, because just like we were talking about for our students and for our children, helping them to identify what those feelings are. Sometimes for ourselves, we need some help identifying, yeah, I'm mad up here, but there's something else going on behind here, and being able to recognize that. And maybe that goes back to you saying you need that time to be able to say, yeah, wait, I'm reacting like this. Why am I doing that?
Yeah.
I really appreciate hearing how Taylor talked about how he embraced his self-care. I did a lesson for a group of second grade kids, and what I learned is, including myself, I mean, I cried while I was riding my bike, but some of the kids, when they talked about how they bounced back, it was just really sitting still. One child talked about just getting on the floor and laying. And so there was such a huge difference. Some kids went into their room. One has like a little kind of like teepee that was her quiet, safe place. So there isn't a right or wrong doing it. It's just recognizing what works best for each of you.
Yeah.
Or each of you guys too.
Yeah. I think something else that, at least for some guys, is knowing that it sounds counterintuitive, but knowing that they're not going to be pushed to cry can actually help open up. Because I think sometimes, at least from my experience, I've gone into conversations and I can feel someone trying to like, you gotta cry. And there are times where I'm like, no, I don't need to. Like, even though you may want me to, this is not, that's
Make
not
your therapist unhappy.
Not making the therapist to not earn their keep that day.
That's right. It's a good session if you cry.
But I think there has to be an understanding that, if I'm gonna talk to someone, then there shouldn't be expectations around it. It should just be like, whatever comes up, comes up. With that, you can get a little bit more into emotions.
Right. You let them lead and you can follow. And maybe that's the same thing, going back to our original thing with parents working with their kids. Don't go into it expecting them to be X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
Maybe stand back a little bit and kind of follow where they want to take you, because as counselors, we've all been trained, right? To be able to take that step back and not assume that we know what the next 3 steps are going to be. Yeah. And sometimes when you're talking with your own children, that's not a bad place to go, because you're kind of laying your expectations on them. But if you take those out of the way, you might be really surprised at what they are able to talk to you about and what they are able to disclose to you.
Yeah, it also reminds me of kids are so much more resilient than we often give them credit for. And I'm not saying all kids. It just reminds me of the time that you have like 2 kids squabbling on the playground. And then of course they go home and they tell the parents, and then the parents are calling the school or emailing the counselor. And then by the time we get back through to talk to the kids have already worked it out. Yeah. So it's possible that your kids have already worked out where they need to go with this, and that the parents might be holding different feelings or might be at a different stage of this grief process than the kids are. Yeah. That's where those open-ended questions come in so handy. I'm wondering if you guys think it'd be helpful at all to just kind of throw out some open-ended questions and give adults an opportunity to see what some of those questions might look like.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So you start like what?
I usually start light and fun, get a little bit heavy, go back light, get a little bit heavier, go back light, get a little bit heavier. So I would start with like, the best part of my day was the, the funniest thing I heard today was, you know, um, this makes me really happy. Um, you
I
know,
also, okay, sorry.
I was to say then I might throw in there, this makes me feel sad.
Mm-hmm.
This makes me feel frustrated, or and then just
Mm-hmm.
kind of go from there.
Yeah, I also include something I'm looking forward to is,
Yeah.
something I am grateful for is, and I also, when I do the grateful part, I always include something that I'm grateful for that doesn't cost money. Because I know that kids always like to talk about electronics, but what doesn't cost money, it can be family time or whatever. I also like to do like something that I felt challenged by, or something that I struggled with is,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I usually offset I usually go the yin and yang. So I'll say, so the best part of today was, and then the hardest part of today was, or, the rose and thorn kind
Yeah.
of a thing. It is a good balance to be able to do that. Or, so when this happened, what I was thinking was,
that's a good one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or this is what I was feeling, or this is what I saw even.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I do some fill in the blanks. I can do, when I was sad, what helped me feel better is,
Mm-hmm.
or was.
Yeah, that's a good way to close out a conversation, right? Is to like go back to, so what did help you get through this? What tools do you have? How could you use it the next time?
Yeah. I think for sometimes if I'm looking for a direction to go, I'll ask kids, one thing I would change about school is, one thing I would change about home is, and then you can get into like, one thing I would change about myself is, um, and those kind of changing questions are always a good indicator of like, this is where we should go down. This is the trail we should go down right here.
Mm-hmm.
I also love doing self appreciation. Something I like about myself is, because
Totally.
it helps kids to get that
Yeah.
self esteem built up, and what they think about themselves is really important. It matters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting sometimes, you might have all these questions in your head and you might be thinking, I'm going to go light and easy, but sometimes it's even those lighter questions. Suddenly, like I said, if you take a step back and kind of listen to what they're saying,
Yeah.
they'll take you to a whole different. I mean, a question we had today in class was, um, what kind of pizza would you be? This led to an entire conversation. I mean, the first question back was, well, do you want to be eaten or do you want to be saved? So they immediately took it to a whole nother level of two different kinds of pizza, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I hadn't even thought about those things. I thought it was just kind of like a fun question, but it really went into this big conversation all about, and it started with, what kind of pizza would you be?
Yeah.
So it sometimes, if you keep your ears open, again, you can kind of, like you said, Taylor, kind of follow them down the path of where you can see where things are going to go with them, where they're really coming from.
Well, and I think one of the cool things about questions like this, at least from a parent to kiddo perspective, is it's equalizing, because in general, kids can ask the questions back. Or I mean, I always offer for kids to be able to ask questions back, and that's such a empowering thing for kids to be able to like answer a question genuinely, but then also ask it back. Like, okay, yeah, mom, this is what makes me sad. What makes you sad? Or whatever it is.
Well, it's really empowering for the kids to feel like they can ask the same questions back too. Builds relationships, you guys. Totally builds and strengthens those relationships.
And that's what it's about. It's resilience right there.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the crux of like resilience, is having those supportive relationships as like the platform to just keep going?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh, all right, guys.
All right, guys. Sounds like it's a wrap.
It sounds like it.
And I know parents are always welcome to email any of us, especially even if they want sentence starters, if they have questions about, this is maybe the conversation I want to have, or whatever you're thinking, feel free to email us and we can try and get you some sentence starters for those.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We've got them coming every direction. So
All right. Bye,
All right,
guys.
guys.
Bye.
Have a good afternoon.
You too.